Hello, dear creators. I wanted to follow up on the warm-up practice that I gave you for this week and let you know the next task and a little bit of the theoretical perspective that I'm coming from, which is not original. I don't know that anything is original, but it's a byproduct of my experience. And I only offer it as something for you to try out as a hypothesis for yourself and keep what lives and works for you. So I'd like you to entertain the idea that the muse, the living urge to create, to generate, is not psychological. In quote unquote Western society, we often think of the muse as individualistic. And as visiting us in dreams, and is especially available to people with a specific talent of some kind. I'd like to suggest that the muse, rather than psychological, that it's practical, it's available, and it lives and breathes at the interface between us and our world. So you're going to be becoming, or I'm asking you to become more conscious of your contact with the bread as it goes in the toaster, your contact with the crumbs at the edge of your eye when you're getting out of bed in the morning. What if the muse is waiting for you in interaction? So that is sort of the premise that I'm curious about. And a lot of what I'm asking you to do is to inculcate a habit of showing up to the place that you've chosen. So if you're working from home, you might have 3 or 4 different spaces that you plan to use during this workshop, which is great. So for this week, I'd like you to just choose one of those, and you can shift after this week as your needs shift. But what we're doing is we're short-circuiting that browsing mentality that can eat up a lot of our creative time. Well, where will I work today? No, it's kind of a waste of time to do that for too long. So I'm asking you to choose a space for the week, if you haven't already, and to draw on your capacity to repeat and to follow through, even with the most mundane practice. I'd like you to hold on to it and exhaust it until it becomes something else. This is a little habit I'd like you to try getting into and see what happens. One of my teachers, Nancy Stark Smith, taught a lot about continuity in movement practice. And that has deepened in my life in so many other mediums. So that instead of prematurely stepping back to look at what I've done, I follow through. I go deeper and further through where I think, oh, I don't really know how to do this. Maybe not. Stay curious about that and follow through. I hope this is making some sense to you. In a moment, I'm going to get to your actual task for the week. But I just wanted to be clear. So the warm-up that I sent y'all involved kind of divining how your elements might resonate with the elements in your space. The great thing about working with the elements is, especially if, like me, your place-based practice actually covers a large territory. For example, I have a space down here by the Mississippi River, as well as this space here. And I become committed to an element, an element that turns up for me here as well as in that workspace. I am loyal to an element. So I'm asking you, after you've played with that warm-up for a little while, to see if you might notice which of the elements really rings a bell for you right now. Which one is scratching an itch or asking for you to flirt with it. And what we're doing is flirting and courting. So courting has a certain, or it used to have a certain formality and a procedural quality of showing up and slowly loosening up, right? So the first time you might go out on a date with someone, for example, or appear on a job, there's a certain, okay, I'm here, I'm very on time, right? You're super on time, you're sharp, you're ready, you're willing, you're open. And eventually over time, it becomes this dance between you and it. But at first, you just know you need to show up, you need to suit up, and you need to loosen up slowly and gradually over time. So I'd like you to choose one of those elements that's really speaking to you. And over this next week, I'd like you to have two mediums you're working in. One that you feel pretty at home in, and another one that's maybe you have no ego attachment to it, right? If you're a terrible cook, it might be the kitchen. If you're just a horrible dancer, okay, I know who I'm talking to. You're all gorgeous movers, but you get the idea. And I would like one of those two to be quite tactile, okay? So one of those is going to be quite tactile, whether it's the one you're comfortable in or the one that you're not. And I'm going to ask you to create a ritual this week for courting that element in your given space. And this ritual might take 5 minutes. It might take 30 minutes. The way I'm going to have you organize your time, I keep coming back to the dating metaphor because I once dated someone who didn't want to whip out a calendar. And I often didn't know till the last minute if I was going to see this person. And I learned a lot through that experience that I feel loved when I'm put on somebody's calendar. And I suggest that your muse might feel the same. So I'd like you to whip out your calendar, whether it's paper or on your phone, and set it down on your desk, and on a separate sheet of paper, ask yourself, how much time do I want to spend in this practice of building a relationship with a place and an element? If it's 2 hours, you're going to break that up into increments that allow you to build a habit. And the reason for this is if you try to go deep, again, it comes back to courtship. It's not really the natural progression of how growth happens. Small bites over more days will grow in a more stable and flexible way that reflects who you really are. So once you've decided how many hours you're able to put in and want to put in this week, go ahead and schedule yourself for this week. I have a couple folks who just so happen to be working mainly mornings, so they wanted to try adding in a couple of evenings to their schedule so that they're meeting themselves in the comfort zone, but also feeling what it's like to be creative and to have a ritual at a time of day that they don't normally. So, calendarizing your courtship, show up, loosen up, tend to that beautiful element that's talking to you this week. And this is going to start to give you a basis for the conversations that you're going to be having. I can't wait to see what comes out. And if you care to share whatever of your work is tactile or recordable, please share that with one another. Hopefully you've chosen some days on the calendar when you're planning to do that, to introduce one another to your space. And reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns. And happy courting.